Hello, sunshines. I'm Janna.
And I'm Keith, and this is
Hello, Sunshine.
And in this episode, Janna and I have our first guest of the show, my brother Michael.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you doing today, Mike?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
This is episode 2 of the podcast, but in case any listeners didn't, catch the first episode, this is a mental health-focused podcast.
And for today's episode, we are going to be talking about experiences in the mental health world with Mike, his personal experiences. The focus is going to be more around people such as myself and Mike who have been dealing with mental wellness and mental issues for a longer period of time. So I'd say that we're pretty much aficionados at the topic.
Sure.
But also, as a reminder, as always, we are not certified professionals.
Not at all. So yeah, basically take everything with a grain of salt that you hear in this episode. But I mean, if anything is relevant to you and you get anything from this, I mean, that's awesome. But we do advise you to go elsewhere and look at different resources, such as those that we will provide at the end of the episode.
Exactly. You can take our advice. However, I have a bachelor's degree in music, so I am not equipped yet to give this kind of advice. Maybe in like 3 years when I have my master's. Until then, let's get started. So, Mike.
Hello.
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 I want to start off asking, what kind of issues do you identify as having or that you've been dealing with for the last few years?
Well, I guess the short answer is the fun combo of anxiety and depression. Not that I'm comfortable with telling people, hey, I have anxiety and depression. It's not like I'm ashamed of it or anything, but it's not also like something I go out like tooting about, like, hey, everyone, I have anxiety and depression. No. Maybe.
You don't introduce yourself to people as like, hi, I'm anxiety and depression.
Yeah, no, I kind of view myself as Michael usually.
Right.
But those are just characteristics that I have of myself.
How old were you when you were first like diagnosed officially, or that you were maybe even aware of that was what was going on?
There's always been stuff that I've dealt with, like as far back as I can remember, but not that I really realized at the time, as far back as me being a kid, not that I really realized that there was anything different. But I could recall as a kid getting pretty emotional over small things that normally, kids are kids that get emotional and stuff, but I would be a little extra. I would remember after, maybe this is elementary school, after dinner every night, Mother would ask Keith and I, make sure to take a shower. And I didn't want to take a shower, so I always kind of try to sneak out of the room. And then I can remember when Mother would ask, hey, make sure to take a shower, I would just get, I don't know if frustrated is the right word, but it's all like internal. I rarely get mad at anyone else. I always internalize it towards myself somehow, and I would get kind of frustrated at myself, and I wouldn't want to take that shower. I still would, but I wouldn't be like, okay, I'll take a shower. I'd be like, I don't want to, but not that I would be yelling out at Mom or anything. I would just be like, ugh.
Internalized, yeah.
Yeah, and I would do that. And I could also remember, I recall that I told that I had a crush on someone, but they didn't like feel the same way or whatever. But this is like early elementary school, so it didn't mean anything. But I took it like as like I was really upset by it.
Heartbroken.
Yeah, and I began like talking to someone at a really young age. I went to some special child psychologists, and I have very faint memories of that, but I do recall talking to someone at such a young age. I still didn't really know that there was anything really different about me, but I do remember that. I guess I didn't really realize there was anything. Well, and also, I don't know if this is even related, but might be a tangent, but I've always like received some kind of special help throughout education. Well, at least early elementary school into middle school, there's always some special help, but that was due to me. Well, this is kind of different because this is me like needing like speech therapy initially. This is not really mental illness, so I don't know if this is really. I can go into it. I don't know if it's really related, honestly.
I mean, you can go into the IEP if you.
What is IEP?
IEP. Hi, I'm the music teacher here. IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan, and children at schools. It's pretty much a legal binding document that states, my child has this kind of disability or needs these kind of accommodations, and the school is required to honor those. To honor those accommodations. So if you need more time on a test, or if you start to get upset or frustrated and you need to go take a walk, it allows you to do so. And really the only people that know that you have an IEP is your teacher and the special education department at the school, and you and your family. Otherwise, it's a pretty private thing. It's not information that is privy to your classmates and things like that. IEPs are for all kinds of things. They're for mental things, they're for physical things, speech. So you're more than welcome to share that experience, because
sure.
It shaped you to be the person you are today.
I didn't know that there was a name. I didn't know it was called IEP, but no, yeah, I absolutely, if that's what an IEP is, I absolutely had one because as a little tot, I don't know if this has any relation, but probably not. But I used to have trouble putting sentences together. Like I knew words that I knew potato. I don't know if I knew what a potato was, but I could be like potato or water or whatever. But I couldn't say I want a potato. I couldn't form that sentence. So I went to some special speech therapy as a kid. After a few years, I was able to put sentences together, and I didn't really need special speech therapy anymore. I was still put in like special English classes. I was always, whenever it was English time, I'd always be taken out of the main room and be put in a smaller room with a smaller group of my fellow classmates and would just do English there. I'm like, okay, cool. But then even after elementary school, when I was no longer put in a special English class, I would still, at the beginning of every year, whenever there was like a quiz or some assignment that we had to do in class, at the beginning of every year, they would always hand me answer sheets. Like no one else in the class, they'd always hand me the answers. Like, here you go, Michael. If I'm in like a science class or something, like here are all the answers. And at the beginning of every year, I would have to go to the teacher. It's like, I don't know why I'm getting this, because my mom never told, and I love my mom, and something that I really appreciate that she did as a kid was, because I was like a special needs student, there was always an aide in the class, and they were there to help me, but my mom told them, help everyone in the class, not just Michael, go around helping all the kids, don't make him feel isolated or anything. Right. So I, unbeknownst to me, for many years, I had no idea that the aide was in the class for me.
Right.
But so that's why I was still really confused in middle school when I was getting all of these answer sheets, because I never got answer sheets before. And I was like, why am I getting these? I'd always go to the teacher at the beginning of every school year, like, please don't give these to me. I don't want these. I don't need these. I can answer the questions. Stop giving them to me. And the teachers at the beginning of every year, they'd always be, all right, sure. And they would never give it to me. And it would never come up until the next school year started and I got a new teacher. And then they would give me the answer sheet. So I'd have to go to them, like, don't give me the answer sheet. And my mom was like, I don't know. And my mom tried contacting the schools, like, he doesn't need these. And the schools all would be like, I don't know why it never changed. It never did.
Do you think that that had an effect on your like mental health journey? Like as you went from elementary all the way until now, like, do you think that affects you at all or not so much?
I honestly, I don't think it affected me too much. It'll make me feel a little embarrassed at the beginning of every year, sure, but I guess I'd always kind of forget about it until the next school year started. And then when I went to a separate school, I went to a technical school where I got to specialize in engineering in high school. And it didn't follow me there. So I was just a normal, regular student along with, it's actually, it's funny that I say normal, regular student in high school because that's kind of when I started realizing that I have some I had some anxiety issues back in high school.
Yeah, that's definitely when that started to show up and be a little bit more clear.
Yeah. I up until then, I would always be able to finish all my homework assignments on time. Well, last minute, maybe like, hey, I'd always be able to push off assignments to the last minute. I'd be able to finish them be able to finish them, no problem. I'd hand them in. There'd be no problems. I would get mostly straight A's and stuff until high school. At high school, I was used to pushing work off to the last minute. But the bar is set much higher at this school than
A normal public school.
yeah. So I could no longer push assignments to the last minute, but that was already kind of really ingrained in me and I really struggled with time management. That is one of the main cruxes is managing my time, and all this work would always snowball, and in the future, I would even be able to kind of see the patterns forming. But back then, this is the first time that this was ever happening to me. I didn't know how to manage my time properly. Assignments would catch up. And then I began having to talk to there's some special help, like service. There was a school counselor, therapist that I would be able to talk to, and she would work with me and try to figure out, okay, you could have some extra time on some assignments, and I'd try to use them to the best of my ability. But I can remember sometimes where I would have meetings between the school counselor and teachers there at my school. Teachers that were pretty demanding and expected a lot from the students because they wanted to see all of us prosper, but I could kind of tell they didn't really like the idea of, hey, there's this kid who needs some extra time on the work. And I always feel that would really get to me in my head that I do not like asking for this extra time. I don't in my head, I did not feel like I deserved it. I put myself into this position. I shouldn't be getting special help. I'm not saying this is absolutely not the way to think. This is how my brain was working at the time.
That's your mental health speaking to you.
Yeah, that like I do not deserve this. I shouldn't be getting this extra amount of time. All this work should already be finished. And here I am asking these teachers who are expecting so much from me, can I have some extra time?
You're like bearing your soul to these teachers that are already kind of looking down upon you. And it's like, that's the crazy thing is like I've been in a similar situation where it's like, all these people are looking at you like, why are you so lazy? Why are you doing that? Like, come on, just like get it together. And what you realize in hindsight, but not in the moment then, like, because you had something going on. It wasn't just you refusing. Like, you were kind of trying to figure your stuff out. And I'm sorry that you were in an environment that wasn't super duper supportive of that.
Well, not everyone was like that, but there definitely were some people that expected a lot.
But enough to like put that kind of negative thought in your head.
Yeah. And I don't know if this should be included in what I'm about to say, but yeah, there were I can remember some of the teachers that I had there that came from different parts of the world, different cultures, and were raised with different backgrounds and different viewpoints, and some places where mental wellness is not as well
received,
respected,
understood.
Yeah, so I can remember some of those teachers, some from those different parts of the world would really not like me struggling with that.
Mike, you have no idea how much we have in common.
Yeah.
I've been in your shoes, and it's not fun, especially when you yourself don't know what the heck is going on. And it's like you're just as frustrated as they are. Yeah. And you wish you could say, like, I wish I knew why I can't get out of bed. I wish I knew why I can't get this homework done. I don't know. Could you tell me? Because I don't know. And I feel like that happens a lot to kids, especially today. And it really, I feel like the loss of empathy and treating students like human beings. And it's like I feel like sometimes teachers forget, like, you know, culturally or not, I think that adults sometimes do forget, like, everybody's carrying around something. And I don't think it's right to make assumptions about somebody based on a few circumstances, or they didn't really truly obviously know you because they didn't know that you were struggling.
Yeah.
Also, from what I recall in high school, I mean, just going off of what you were just saying, I do recall there being a good support system at the school for you still.
There was. No, yeah. Like I briefly talked about the counselor, the therapist that was there.
Yeah, and I also remember the principal at the time.
Oh, absolutely. There were there were a lot of supportive people there. It could have been much, much worse. There were a lot of people there to support me. And I was very thankful for that. There were a lot of good
the principal
people there.
was there who had your back from day one. He was actually one of the individuals who encouraged you to go to that school.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still really respect him to this day. He's such a good guy. Yeah. But so yeah, that was the high school I went to, and of course I didn't try taking the easy classes. I always go for the AP classes, and the AP classes on top, like past AP. Like I took Calc 1 through 3 in high school, and like Physics A, B, and Physics B, C. I took, I was stacking AP quiz, so it's not like that made it easy. I got through it, but it's not like it made it much easier. And then this all, of course, carried into college because I decided to go to school for engineering, and then that turned into computer engineering, which is not known to be easy. So a lot of this continued into college.
Which is a much different environment
Absolutely.
than high school, because college is more reflective of the real world experience.
Yeah, in
terms of taking care of things yourself.
Yeah, sink or swim.
Yeah, in high school, teachers are still they're there for the students. They're trying to really pull the class along, like teachers. And
not that they're not in college, but
no, it's more like
the culture is different.
Yeah. Teachers will in college, if you have a good teacher, if you have a good professor in college, if you want to learn, they will do everything they can. If you have a good professor, they will work their butts off, but they're only going to work their butts off for students who show that they want to learn. If you don't put in the work to graduate, then the professors, they're not going to put in the work to help out students who aren't putting in the work as well. And that only gets more complicated when you start mixing in mental wellness into this. But there are like counselors that I was able to talk to. There's a whole facility at the school I went to, Rutgers, that all like for helping students out. There was a lot of help at Rutgers for me to reach out. But it gets really complicated when it gets to individual professors, because in the end, it's up to the professors, like the special departments who you can work with dealing with mental health. They can reach out to the professors, but it's ultimately up to the professors whether they choose to accept, okay, yes, this person needs some extra help or not. I've had professors that refuse to help me at all. Like even with going to these departments, they would say, you didn't do the work, you missed. Like, there are some parts of college that got pretty rough for me. I remember there'd be whole chunks of exams that I would miss because I was too anxious to go to them. I felt I didn't prepare enough for the exams, and I'd be too anxious to show up. And it got really weird for me because I would start using the excuse, hey, I could just take a makeup exam. I don't have to go right now. So it's like, if I didn't have that extra help, maybe I still would have pushed myself to go to the exam. But being that I could take a makeup exam, I would say, okay, I don't have to. It got really weird, and I got really guilty with just all this stuff was like just crossing over there. I wanted to push myself, but I got really anxious. I would get anxiety episodes. It became a mess. I really had a hard time managing all this work, and there's a lot of work expected for computer engineers and many different programs, but from my experience, a lot is expected of computer engineers, and it got rough. There were some professors that were just one of the roughest things I can remember from college is there's this one professor I had for one class, and I was not doing well in his class. I remember the first time I tried taking his class, I was not doing well in it, and I dropped out of the class. But then I was thinking, after I dropped out, maybe if I put in some extra work, maybe I could have still passed the class. So after dropping out during that semester, I remember going up to him like during his office hours and saying, hey, maybe I could rejoin your, I was a mess at this point. I was asking maybe I could rejoin your class, maybe I could finish all this work. And then he was going through all the assignments I hadn't completed, all the grades for tests and whatnot that weren't that great. And he was saying, there's no way you can do this. Like, there's so much work. And I probably mentioned that I had some like mental struggles at this point. And something that really still kind of really hurt me was you could just take some like medication like candy or whatever to help you like do better. And I didn't really have anything to say, and I just kind of walked out. And I remember the second time I took his class, at the beginning of like the following semester when I was taking the class again, he was going over stories of prior students in his classes of how not to act. And I was one of those stories. I remember sitting in there and he was going over, hey, I had this one student who in the middle of the semester after dropping out went up to me and was asking if he could rejoin the class. He was a mess. Like, and he was telling the class, you need to like organize your time. You can't do that. I remember sitting there and I was afraid to go back into class for a few weeks because I just couldn't sit back in that lecture hall again. He didn't point me out or anything. He said everything. Like, he didn't call out any names. I remember like at the end of that lecture saying I was that student and that I would try to do better and everything. He was just like, okay. But I was afraid to go back in there for a few weeks. And that was a really rough time. But after enough help and enough time management, I eventually got through it. It took a few extra years to graduate, but I eventually got there. So, yeah, it was pretty rough at times, if I'm being really honest. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting upset because I've been through very, very similar things, especially in college. And there's nothing worse than, mental health is not something you can touch. It's not tangible. You can't hold it in your hands. It's invisible. And it's so easy to say to a teacher, oh, I can't do this assignment because I broke my arm and it's my good arm and I can't write with my left and I can only write with my right. Like, it's not like that. It's a handicap for some people, especially when they're going through, stressful, rough periods in their life. And I have also dealt with teachers of different cultural backgrounds. There are going to be people in life that don't respect what's going on, which is why I tend to lead life with an empathetic and sympathetic attitude because, I don't know if someone's family member just died or they haven't been able to get out of bed for a week, or this is the first time they haven't like thrown up because, their stomach won't settle. Like, because I've been that person praying that somebody else would be that for me. Like someone else would pay a little closer attention and be a little bit more like kind in that respect. So I'm sorry that you went through all that because you didn't deserve that. And obviously you're a very intelligent person. Otherwise you wouldn't have been where you were being put in life, like going to a technical high school and pursuing something I could never do, computer engineering. Again,
I can't do music.
I could teach you. I could teach you, but I have to try. No, but thank you for sharing that because it's not easy to talk about, which is why I was getting all like misty-eyed over here because I relate so hard.
Yeah. And the overall majority of professors I had were typically understanding. Those are just a
But it's those crappy ones that really just like
No, those are the ones that you remember.
that fuck you up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to reiterate what Janna was just saying, I mean, it really just sucks and hurts hearing those stories. But what was your support system like in college?
Well, I had a few pretty dope friends.
Dope.
Yeah, dope, yo. And one thing that I learned a little too late in engineering school, but that could apply to many other schools, is I would sometimes be really anxious to go to classes because I would think, oh, I don't know enough. I didn't read this chapter. I'm not going to be able to follow the lesson plan or anything. Everyone else in the class is going to be so much more well prepared than I am. The thing is, no one in engineering knows what they're doing. That's the secret that they don't tell you. No one knows anything. The majority of students have no idea what's going on, and you're absolutely not alone.
Right.
That's not to say don't work, because you absolutely need to, but if you're feeling that you're so behind in the class, you're absolutely not the only one.
Right. But kind of like circling back to your experiences in college and which, by the way, you graduated this spring, so congratulations.
Thank you.
I think I want to bring up the point that not everybody's journey is linear.
I took 7 years to graduate a 4-year program.
And that's okay. Like, you don't, everyone from the day that we are born is beaten into our brains that we have to finish, you know, we have to go away to school, we have to finish a degree in 4 years, and then we get married, have kids, live life, die. Like that's the kosher way, the timeline that is kind of ingrained in us. But
4 years isn't necessarily normal. Like, I graduated in 4 years personally, but if anything, I still felt odd on my ends because out of everyone that was close to me, both from back at home and who I went to college with, no one else graduated along with me.
right.
I was on that boat alone.
Yeah, it's not everybody's journey ends in 4 years. I mean, there were times with, you know, in regard to my mental health where my mom was like, maybe we should take a break. And I would consider it, and then I'd say, you know what, no, I just want to get this the hell over with so I can be done.
That was the same with you, Mike.
Yeah.
Right.
And the extra few years did provide some benefits. Like I got to do some research, you know, within the neuroscience department at Rutgers, which is absolutely fascinating, and I love doing it. So there were positives that came out of it. I got to spend more time doing my research and learning machine learning and whatnot. So that was pretty dope.
Right. And like, just because it took a little extra time doesn't mean that you're going to be any less of a computer engineer.
Yeah.
Just like me still not understanding what the hell an Aeolian scale is, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I'm a very effective teacher. I've been told so.
Honestly, anyone that's doing any form of engineering, especially computer engineering, you already kind of have a mental illness. Like no sane person goes through those programs. So, yeah.
Well, just to kind of reiterate a comment I made earlier, going back to when we first started talking and you talked about, like, you know, the origins of when you started to notice, like, I'm a little bit different than some of my friends. I very similarly, the worst of it was high school. Mm-hmm. So we have that in common. I first noticed my issues when I was in middle school, and at the time I didn't understand what was happening. So the only words that I could use to describe it were like, I felt homesick. It was like this constant feeling of, I need to get the hell out of here and I need to like go home, because that was like my comfort zone. And then over time that developed into like other anxieties and fears. I just wanted to bring the point that like our journeys have a lot of parallels in that kind of around the same time. I think it also biologically makes sense too, because it's like hormones and your body's changing.
Biologically, that reminds me of a point I wanted to make earlier. I'm pretty sure a lot of my stuff is genetic.
Oh, dude, same here. Yep.
Yeah. So my brother, who's also on this podcast, you know, like I shared genetic material with him. We both share genetic material with our mother, who also has some anxiety shizzle, and she shares genetic material with her mother,
Who also has a history.
who also had, which I talked to his mother the other day, and I didn't realize how bad of anxiety that grandmother had, but she had a lot of anxiety. Towards the end of her life, she wouldn't leave the house.
She became like agoraphobic.
Let's pretend I don't know what that means.
Agoraphobic means like afraid to go outside, like to leave your house.
Yeah, maybe to some degree.
Like afraid of the outside world.
Something like that, maybe. Like, it didn't, like, at first she, started to go outside the house less and less. And then it got to the point she'd only go to the doctor and church.
Only
and
she
then,
had to.
And then she would only sit at the back of the church. There would be a chair at the back of the church that she would sit at by herself. And then she would only go to the doctor if she ever had to. And other than that, she would just stay inside the house. I remember mother telling that to me the other day, and I was like, whoa. And that's why mom likes to get me out of my room a lot, because she doesn't want me to stay.
To isolate yourself like that. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Okay, all right, I see where you're coming from with that.
It's the same way in my family, too. On both sides. So my psychiatrist calls it a double whammy.
While we talked a lot about school, I want to hear a little bit more from you. You could tell the audience how your anxiety and depression has affected you in social situations.
Oh yeah, social anxiety. That's another fun one. I absolutely get social anxiety at sometimes. I've been getting a lot better, but there'll be times where I'll just be with a group of peeps, and usually I have high energy at the beginning of it, and be like, hey, what's up, everyone? YOLO. Let's raise the roof and drink some fun, age-appropriate beverages.
Who still says YOLO?
Oh, I mean, you just did.
I know this is a goofy example on your end, but I'm just thinking this out loud.
At least
mentally
two.
ill people do.
Hello.
People with social anxiety do.
Yes. And then I might start getting quiet after a while. Maybe there would be something I'll be thinking about. Hey, maybe I shouldn't have said that one thing, or hey, that person's doing better in life than I am. And then I will start being quieter. Maybe I'll want some time to myself, which usually is the bathroom, since that's usually the place you could just be by yourself. And yeah, just to try to get away from a group and try to relax a little bit. So yeah, definitely social anxiety gets to me, and usually it'll be me comparing myself to other people, not thinking I'm good enough, or that I'm not equals with other people. A lot of my anxiety just comes from me comparing myself to other people. There's actually kind of like two parts to me that I struggle with. One part of me being anxious and hard to motivate myself to do things, even though I know they need to be taken care of. And the other part of me would be like really kind of want to be more controlling over myself, and be like, you need to be taking care of these things that you're not taking care of. You need to pay your bills. You need to change the tires on your car. You need to do these things. And then I'll be like, oh, one part of me is like, I don't want to do this right now. And the other part of me, you have to do this right now. And then those kind of two sides kind of like pull along each other. And I'll have dreams. I can remember, like, one common one I used to have is I'll be driving a car, but I'll drive through a stop sign, and I'll realize when it's too late that I drove through the stop sign, and feel like I'm losing control, that I should have been able to realize that, but I'm realizing it too late. I'm just feeling like I'm losing control over myself. Maybe my room will be a mess, and I feel like I'm a mess sleeping in the same room that's a mess, or I just feel like I'm losing, that I can't just manage my time, manage all these little things over myself. And then I feel ashamed, like, why can't I even take care of these little things? I'm a 25-year-old adult. I should be able to do these things. Why am I having trouble with them? Something like that.
I can commiserate. I think that I was diagnosed with ADHD later in life at the age of 20, but it sure made things a lot clearer. It made things that I went through in my life make a lot more sense. Things like you just said, like the motivation to do simple things, like take care of myself, which I think the best motivation for me sometimes, like as unhealthy as this is anxiety. Like,
there are healthy forms of
right.
Like, anxiety is a normal emotion.
Absolutely.
That to a degree, healthy humans do have anxiety. Like, we've
Right.
evolved to have it. It's just that it's imbalanced in some people.
Right.
I mean, anxiety is a form of energy. And a big thing is, again, as we established, I'm not a mental health professional, but from the way I try to frame it for myself, being a form of energy, it has to be expelled some way. That's the best way to get rid of it. So, I mean, in that, what you're saying, like the best form of motivation in times could be anxiety. It's just like using it to force you to do something in some situations. Because otherwise, I mean, if you hold in and bottle that anxiety, that just builds up and makes you feel physically or mentally uncomfortable or unstable. So it's an energy that you have to find the best way for you to expel and maybe be productive with it, or take the load off, just go for a run. I don't know what.
Go for walks. Walks are like
so good for you.
about the best thing. If you're anxious, go for a walk.
It
And it doesn't have to be a long
endorphins.
walk. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a long walk. It could just be a 10-minute walk. It doesn't have to be a long one, but go for walks. And you don't have to wait to be anxious to go for a walk.
Right.
Even if you're feeling all right, go for a walk. Go for a walk. Those are good for your brain.
Hey, Micah, what are you suggesting for the audience to do?
Oh my goodness. Really, what a lot of my anxiety comes from, which I think a lot of people can agree with, is anxiety is the fear of fear. It's something that you can't control. And for somebody like me who has generalized anxiety disorder, and for a little bit panic disorder, which is, it's like your body thinks that you are about to jump off a cliff, but you're not about to jump off a cliff. You're sitting in your bedroom and everything's fine and you're safe and you're okay. But your body produces the hormones and the adrenaline as if you're about to jump off of a cliff. And it kind of overwhelms your system to a point where sometimes you have an anxiety attack and that looks different for lots of other people. So sometimes one way to help combat these feelings, besides breathing and meditation and things like that, or medication if need be, journaling is a great one. Songwriting, journaling, writing poetry, writing music, playing music, singing, going for walks, as Michael said 20,000 times. Exercises.
What did he suggest?
Going for a walk. But yeah, like for me, like that form of self-care is definitely having therapy once a week, especially not because I don't have a wonderful support system in my life. However, I sometimes feel like my problems are a little too big for my friends to solve. So I tend to save all my juicy stuff for when I have therapy, because I feel like that's like my safe haven to be fully transparent and honest. But I definitely can vouch for the fact that writing things down definitely helps. Just finding a way to express it, and then you can either keep your notes, or you can burn them in the fire, or you can send them off in a balloon, or you can eat them. But then you'd be eating your own feelings, and I don't think that's very healthy.
And plus, I don't think it's good to eat, well, what I'm assuming is paper.
Yeah. But I mean, like, reduce,
if
reuse,
you-
recycle.
But what if you wrote your feelings in cake icing on top of a cake?
Ooh.
Is that a good way of eating your feelings?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely not the healthiest. However,
No, because I feel like we're going to talk about like physical health in another episode, and I
for sure.
I don't think cake is a good example.
no,
On
but
the episode,
It's not the best. I mean, we're not going to endorse it.
what's important is to do something that means something to you as an individual.
I love oatmeal. Oatmeal is so good.
All right,
I
so
love
then,
putting berries in there, so write a message with berries.
right, just write like self-loathing. Eat that shit. Eat it up. Digest it.
I don't really want it. Every time I make oatmeal, I don't want to painstakingly write a message, and that message being self-loathing.
That was just whatever was the first thing that came into my head.
And just like make a smiley face or something.
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
With blueberries.
Yes.
Could a strawberry be like the nose?
You know what?
Can I cheat and put a banana as the smile?
Sky's the limit, Mike.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Anyway, is there anything else?
I'm not talking about that sugary oatmeal either. I'm talking about that bland, healthy oatmeal, that good shizzle.
That good.
I do cheat. I do the 1 minute oatmeal, but it's still good, yo.
So originally, when Keith and I discussed the idea for this podcast, we wanted to talk about a multitude of different topics, and the one of, people who have been in the world of mental health for a while, who've been dealing with it for a while, getting treatment for a while, and just kind of getting their perspective of their journey and where they are now and how they got there. And so I just, first of all, want to thank you, Mike, for being so vulnerable and for sharing your story, because I think it's important that people know that you made it to the other side.
Yeah.
Which is like key to remember, is no feeling is final. Like my therapist, hey Karen, always says, every time I think of I can't do something, she says, well, Janna, you've been successful up to this point. You've made it over every bridge.
Yeah, just one step at a time, really.
Yeah.
When there's a big thing to do, just don't look at it as a big thing. Just
step
do
by
it.
step.
Yeah.
Multiple little things.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You have a big box of chocolates. You don't eat. Well, I mean, you could. Actually, that does sound pretty good. I kind of want to have an entire box of chocolates right now. But normally, you just have one chocolate at a time. That's a weird analogy.
Well,
Okay, Forrest.
until. So with that being said, we're going to wrap up today's episode by sharing some different resources that you can reach out to if need be. There's Psychology Today, which is a magazine and a website where you can find a therapist in your area that is covered by your insurance. Also, we have suicidepreventionlifeline.org or crisis text line, text REASON to 741741. It's free, confidential, and 24/7. You are not alone in your mental health journey. Please reach out if you need help. There's no shame in asking for help.
And on top of that, even though we brought up those professional sources, I'm going to remind you that we have our own social media. So be sure to check out what we post there, whether it be advice or insight, or we're just sharing when there's going to be a new episode released. So, signing off now, I'd like to say things may not always be easy.
But don't forget to try to stay on the bright side.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.